From my point, 2018 was about data. Like, how do you get data? Then 2019 becomes about how do you get delivered? And 2020, I think that's going to be personalization. Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of quickmail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com.
All right, so new year, new resolutions, hopefully. And what a better way than actually just looking at a past year, figuring out what are the themes of last year to enter 2020 with the right foot. What do you think, Jack?
That's exactly right. So Jeremy and I picked our 3 favorite episodes, and we're going to give you a recap in case you missed all of 2019. These are the gems that you want to have with you as we move into the new year. So, yeah, we've got some episodes picked out. Why don't we get right to it?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so in no particular order, I want to know, Jeremy, what's the first episode you pulled out of the archives to keep in mind for this year?
Yeah, so we've done quite a lot. And I think for me, one of the predominant theme of last year is definitely about volume and personalization. And I see you nodding. So
I'm nodding, yeah.
I got a few episodes that we could go for illustrating this point or highlighting this. But I think I would recommend people to listen to episode 90, How to Call Email Limited Market Like a Pro. The spin is not necessarily on sending less email to a large audience.
Right.
But really about what are the way to become like more personalized and, develop more relationship. And I think with this mindset, you can't really go and think like, right, I'm going to send an email to 5,000 prospects in one go. So it's a good exercise. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to say the next one and the next one again, kind of in the same vein. So you got 91 and 92, 91 being a tear down where we're looking at improving personalization.
Yep.
And 92 being about, the 80-20 about reply rate and extreme personalization at scale, which again, for me, it's the same subject. I think it was very, very strong at that time. And I think it's still very valid for 2020.
Okay. So based on this episode or this theme here, would you recommend cold emailers in 2020 definitely upgrade their personalization and lower their volume? Does volume change at all in this new year, according to you?
I believe you should look at your list, think, how can I divide it by 2 while obtaining the same reply rate? And for that, you kind of have to go and do some personalization anyway. So I think it goes hands in hands in that way.
Hold on. I think what you are meaning is how can you cut your list in half and yet have the same number of replies?
That's right.
Okay. So in other words, think about how are you going to get twice the replies from half the list? That's sort of the theme coming up.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like it. Okay. So
what about you, Jack? Give me your first theme or episode.
Yeah. So I want to start off with Schwinns Podcast interview from Pipe Candy. I had a lot of fun with this episode, and I'll tell you why. Schwinn comes from a hardcore data science background. I believe he was selling analytics for e-commerce sites at one point.
That's right.
But he gravitated towards outbound, but kept this obsession with data as he did outreach. And it allowed him to do some really cool things. And I'll just highlight one thing from this episode that I thought was really cool. And why don't more of us do this? Schwinn was able to qualify or score his prospects by using a web scraper that visited many different websites and pulled out certain key parts of that website to figure out if they're a better candidate or a worse candidate than others. And he was able to put together a bit of a ranking system for the best prospects all the way down to the ones that may be wasting time. So it really sped up a lot of the sales process for him. And it was just a smart sales technique. And today, if you're sitting on a market that is quite large, you may want to talk with someone who really understands data science or web scraping to figure out how do you shorten this list, which is kind of funny because we just talked about volume. It's like, how can you shorten a list, but based on a certain set of criteria that will help you close sales?
So would you recommend people to just go ahead and build their own scraper?
Not
in 2020?
necessarily, but it's not the worst idea. The scrapers are going to be helpful, but only if you tell it to pull meaningful information out of the site. So what I would actually recommend instead is just do it manually at first. It's like, just take a look at the people who are replying positively, who are closing with you guys. See if there's something publicly available either on their website or maybe it's on another profile that they have. See if there's some commonalities that you can just detect manually and go through your list. And if you figure out criteria that is just indicates that prospect is a pure time waster. I know for some clients that I've heard, they really are interested in dealing with companies that have more than one location. So one example for them, now that they've identified that as a helpful qualifier, is you could build a scraper that says, okay, I want you to crawl the entire site for this business I'm reaching out to. And if they have more than 2 physical addresses listed, okay, we're going to give them 10 points. And if not, we're going to dock them 10 points. And that way, that's a very simple way that you can start using data to do a better job with prospecting. Super smart. And why not? It's 2020, so get technical.
Yeah, that's right. At the same time, I think some enrichment tool may actually help.
Okay.
Do you have any tool that you would recommend people to use?
For enrichment tools, Full Contact and Clearbit are pretty popular right now. I believe they compete with each other, but I've heard good things about Discover.org as well.
Yep.
And I'll leave it to those 3. Am I missing any other big players out there?
I would have said the same.
It's certainly worth testing, but please don't try and overcomplicate this right away. Just look manually at first, see if there's some clear indicators that pop out and run some tests before you decide to invest, or even worst case scenario, let adopting these tools slow your progress down.
Love it. Is it my turn?
Your turn. What's next?
It's very interesting how we become way more professionalized in 2020, where in previous years, we kind of like give you a pass for, being a bit sloppy on some ends as long as you got good personalization and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next theme that I want to pick up is the episode 96, how to 10x your productivity using a VA.
Mm-hmm.
It was very tactical and actionable, like almost like a blueprint about how you want to go about, getting a professional system where you don't need to be part of necessarily. And I think for me, particularly as well, on a more personal level, it really resonated with me. And I think why not? That also helps you to think about growing your operation without necessarily being the one bottleneck in it.
Okay.
So if you got something that works, why not start to split the process into multiple chunks and sort of like start delegating to different roles and different people?
I love it. And we're not going to get back into that cast. But by the way, what episode is it for those of us who want to revisit?
96.
Cool. So what's the first step for someone who's listening right now and they're saying, I should have a VA or someone to help me out with Outbound? What's the first step they should do?
Easy peasy. They just go to podcast.quickmail.io, they put up the episode 96, and they listen to it.
Perfect. Hey, I'm fine with that answer. That's great, because there is some gems in that podcast. And certainly it is a topic that's quite powerful because it takes you out of this sort of repetitive task. And instead it lets you replace yourself, buy more time throughout your week to do really the big stuff that's going to move the needle.
And if you're a founder and you're single-handedly handling your operation, in order for your project not to be a train wreck, you may want to read E-Myth Revisited, which was mentioned during this episode, which I've been reading recently and really, really, really enjoyed.
Okay, cool. So you've got some homework. Listen to the episode, get that book. Nice. All right, I got another one here. Episode 109, doing inbound with an outbound mentality here.
Nice.
And I picked it for the plain reason that it landed me some consulting gigs this year. And I thought it was a pretty easy to implement tactic that I'm glad I'm doing now. And if you're listening, I bet there's a way that you can apply this in 2020. Basically, the principle is this. So you know how in cold email, we have this mentality where there's a sea of prospects out there just waiting to hear from you. And really, this is the thing. It's like you just have to get off your ass and reach out and start this conversation, begin the dialogue. And it's kind of a beautiful thing because before there was nothing, you reach out and now there's something. And when you are approaching inbound with this mentality, there's this really nice thing that happens because I feel like if we're too much in the world of inbound marketing, it's kind of this create, promote, and then sit back and wait for leads to come in. And here's the thing, even when a lead comes in, they download an ebook, for example, or they, sign up for a demo, but never really show up. There's still somebody who probably needs what you're selling. And inbound alone sometimes isn't enough to bring them from lead to customer. So
that's right.
When a lead comes in your door, you still have this outbound skill set that you can find people who are most likely ready to buy, and you can identify them by number of times they're opening your messaging, number of times they're visiting your website. There's factors here that can sort through prospects that haven't bit, but probably are hungry and need what you're selling, and just use some outbound skills that you already have to go get them in the door. It's beautiful.
And if you combine that with what we were saying before about getting a smaller list, but with one key criteria to qualify them better, then you can even pre-qualify your inbound leads if you do that research on them and go after only the one that have a high chance of eventually, going over the edge and converting.
And you've just covered the one caveat is don't waste your time, even if it's an inbound lead. Don't waste your time calling them if they're not making it clear, not raising their hand that they are someone who is worth your time to go out and individually either call or message. It's got to make sense from the standpoint of are they qualified and are they engaging with your stuff?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Definitely very important precision.
Okay, so we each have one more.
Yes.
Take us home, Jeremy. What do you got?
Okay, the last one is very interesting in a sense that I think it's growing as a theme. It only started, I would say, around 2019. We only barely touched about it, but I think that's going to be more and more a subject in 2020 and possibly going further. And it's about the ethic about cold email and how we approach automation. And you can find that in episode 127, Lying, Cheating, and Stealing, the Ethic of Automation. I think that was a really good episode and kind of a difficult one as well, because ethic is not that black and white.
It's a tricky subject, right? It's true. So what are the new things that have suddenly made cold email an ethical conversation? I mean, there's certainly AI, right? Is that what we're really talking about here?
Yeah, there is AI. And I think as we increase the personalization, then some of the thing will be more like borderline on how it is done. And the whole thing about warming up the inboxes as well, which is wasting someone else's time for your own personal benefit. There's stuff that starts to pop up and some important question that, people are going to have to answer for themselves.
It's true. And I think there's one other reason why in 2020 this is a relevant topic for outbound. And that's because it's not as simple as it used to be. Before, get a new domain, set up, add a signature, and fire away. But now, with deliverability being so challenging, there's kind of black hat strategies that are currently working, yet not so ethical from many different perspectives. So, okay, Jeremy, help me out. I'm listening to this cast. You mentioned ethics. I'm a good guy. I want to do the right thing.
I shouldn't have. I don't want to put my finger into it again.
Okay. How about what's something I should keep in mind in 2020 in terms of ethics? Should I make sure I read every email that gets sent on my behalf? Is there some guidelines I should give my team? Is there a limit to what AI?
We all have some different comfort when it comes to those things. For some people, it's okay. For some other, it's not. I give you a stupid example. In Japan, slurping is actually totally okay.
Yeah.
But in Europe, it will be considered as rude. So, it's like good and evil. Sure, sometimes there is black and white, but most of the time it's just all gray. And it really depends on how you stand about some of the things.
That's definitely true. We're going to be comfortable with some things, others won't be. But I do have one thing to consider that should help you decide if you're being ethical or not. And that is if the Wall Street Journal found out about your campaign that you're putting together and published a headline story on it. And no, they said, look, this is, Yeah, who
They
knows?
may
Yeah.
soon do it.
Would you be
actually.
proud of that story, or would you be ashamed of that story? If it's the first, if you're proud to have that published, then you're on the right track. If not, consider something else.
Okay. We're going to diverge on this one slightly from the cast. I'm really sorry for this now, but I think it's a very interesting one. I don't want to give too much details, but I've done something that I thought was actually pretty damn cool. And I was pretty happy about the sort of like sneakiness of it in a sense. But then when that come to get known, I was like, hold on a second. Yeah, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing to do. You know what I mean? So it's not always that easy to figure out ahead of time.
How about this? Just because it works doesn't mean it's right. And I think that's what the ethics conversation was about.
Exactly. And I think I was carried away in a sort of the idea of, oh, cool, that could work. And then trying it out more than actually thinking about, is that really okay? Should I really do that? Or should I try something? And if I had thought a little bit more about this, I probably would have changed slightly the approach.
I find myself wanting to keep adding to this discussion. It may be that we will revisit ethics in 2020 because it's
let's do it.
It's interesting. Yeah, we'll bring on a philosophy PhD for that discussion for you guys. But anyways, go ahead.
And if you're actually thinking about something and you want to tell us, just send us an email, podcast@quickmail.io. Let's talk about ethics.
There you go. Okay, so final episode for me. I would love to recap. This was the water cooler chat just before the ethics conversation we had about why you're still struggling with deliverability, and it's all about engagement. I think if
That's right.
More than anything, this is going to be the theme for 2020. Engagement being the rubric, the grading scale that determines whether or not you inbox. If you had a USB stick or a thumb drive that you could just download one takeaway and store it forever, it's monitor your engagement and you will be able to inbox. Now, what I'm talking about really is, what do prospects do in general when they get an email from you? Do they reply? Do they open? Do they mark as spam? And this is kind of going to be the new set of deliverability rules.
Totally agree. And this is kind of funny because I realized that neither you and I actually did select deliverability as the main topic per se. It's always a sort of derivative of what we do. Like you mentioned, if we have great engagement, deliverability is never an issue.
Never an issue.
Right? But 2019, I think, brought deliverability and inbox warm-up on the front line, in front of everything, in the spotlight, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think that will be so much a subject in 2020. I think that'll be more like something like, dude, that was last year's stuff. You should have solved it already.
Meaning, if you are still struggling to get in the inbox, you may leave cold email in general. Is that what you're thinking?
It's more that you're doing it the wrong way, and everyone agrees that this is the wrong way if you're not getting good deliverability anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you this year I had far more deliverability consultations than 2018. I mean, it was almost as if starting in kind of spring 2019, TensorFlow came out and boom, suddenly, I don't know, I got to imagine half the businesses that are doing cold email suddenly are faced with a new set of challenges. And again, I tell people this a lot, but figure out how to keep engagement healthy first and foremost, and that should solve a lot of your problems. Now, obviously, the question follows, okay, Jack, you're so smart. How do we do that? And there lies the rub, so to speak. But it goes back, Jeremy, to what you mentioned earlier. How would you approach your list if you had to cut half of the prospects out and get twice the number of responses from them? And, it's that kind of thinking that is going to help reward outbounders in 2020.
Yeah. From my point, 2018 was about data. Like, how do you get data?
Right.
Then 2019 becomes about how do you get delivered? And 2020, I think that's going to be personalization.
Interesting. I'm thinking 2020, personalization will help with this, but I think it's going to be using outbound to build a network that you can then sell to. So it may be moving more.
It's not far, relationship type of things.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking maybe we've always approached it as a way to get a conversation started, but perhaps it's going to be leveraging the connections you have, adding connections, and then sort of doing outreach to people who are in your circle already. it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Right now, that's definitely not the case. You can still reach out cold and get success.
Dude, we just started 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it some time, man.
I may be a little bit ahead of myself there, but I will say, pay attention to your LinkedIn profiles. Those of you using automation to expand your network, okay. But be careful, because I see it as an asset that you don't want shut down. For better or for worse, I think we need to really value the digital connections we have with the industry, people, with our prospects. And the last thing you want to do is get shut out to the party.
Well said, Jack. So I got one bonus thing I want to say. It's not really one of my top 3 things, but it's something that I want to see more happening from us in 2020. And it's about growth chats. And we did episode 117 and 118 was 2 episodes about growth chat. And Jack and I have been talking a little bit about some growth chat episodes. So I think we're going to see a few more coming up your way in the next few episodes.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm ready for that. Okay, so here comes 2020. A couple things that we can take from us from 2019 and just do a much better job getting those replies that we're seeking. So to a great 2020, if you're listening, hope this helps you sort of run out of the gates getting started.
And the last thing I would say is big shout out to everyone who actually just, send us love and telling us like how great, their cold email is now after listening a few of our episodes. It really always, just makes us humble, really, and very happy as well to see that we're actually doing that and impacting some.
That's right.
Some cold emailers out there, going from terrible results to finally cracking the nut. And, it always makes us like so happy.
Ditto that, Jeremy. And if you haven't introduced yourself to us, reach out. You know how to find us, podcast@quickmail.io. Say hi, let us know some questions, and we'll keep the episodes coming.
Boom. Well said, Jack.
Okay, Jeremy. See ya.
Bye.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher, or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.